Welcome everyone to our regular council meeting for July the 4th, and we have any Americans at home watching or in the audience, happy July the 4th to you people. First of all, I'd like to welcome Councillor Steve Bjorkman back, who is looking pretty good, if you ask me, for all the work he had done just recently. And Councillor Vokes did inform the clerk that he wouldn't be in attendance, and this time it's a nice job, but it's a job that I have to do. So bear with me, please. I have a letter here from Councillor Bill Caxero, dated July the 4th, 2017, regular council meeting. Good evening, everyone. And I'll say before we get started in tonight's agenda, I'd like to make this formal announcement. You'll notice that Councillor Caxero's seat is empty tonight. That's because Councillor Caxero has notified us that he must resign from council for personal reasons. I believe I speak for all of council when I say how deeply saddened we are by this news. But we're also very supportive of Councillor Caxero's decision, and we wish to extend him and his family the privacy that they need at this time. So I would request that leave Bill and his family alone, okay, for a couple of weeks. I'd be remiss if I didn't stop to say a few words about Bill and his warm and generous personality. Bill has been a remarkable, hard-working councillor who participates with enthusiasm. Anyone who knows Bill knows that he gives 100% to everything that he's ever done or planned on doing. During this term, he's been the chair of the Essex Police Services Board and the Personnel Committee, and vice chair of the Finance Committee and the Harbor Steering Committee. He's also been a member of the Arts, Culture, and Tourism Committee and the Communities in Bloom Committee. He's also been sitting on the event committees that is planning our Canada 150 and Colchester 225 event that takes place on July the 29th at Colchester Harbor. We are certainly going to miss Councillor Caxero on our council, but we also wish him the very best. As we haven't had a chance to fully review the matter, we will now announce at a later date how we plan to deal with his vacancy, and that's with regards to filling his seat here on council. So, on behalf of all of us, Bill, if you're tuned in and your family, God bless. Now I'll turn to our clerk, Mr. Roger, for some news for us here.
Thank you, Your Worship. Your Worship, as vacancies on council and the process for filling those vacancies are prescribed matters under the Municipal Act. It's important that council follow the provisions of the Act in this regard. So accordingly, I confirm in public session tonight that I did receive a letter of resignation from Councillor Caxero. And so the most immediate step for council at this point would be to make a resolution of a declaration of vacancy. Council, once that declaration is made, council would then have up to 60 days to pass a bylaw to either appoint an eligible person to fill that vacancy or to declare a by-election. Or to declare a by-election to be held. So accordingly, I do have a draft declaration of vacancy motion that I could read, with your worship and council's permission, I can read off, and then if council is satisfied with that, we would be looking for a mover and seconder on that.
Go ahead, sir. Thank you.
So just reading through this draft motion, whereas the Municipal Act, Section 259D, provides for a council seat becoming vacant as a result of the resignation of a member, and whereas Section 260 of the Act provides that a member may resign the office by notice in writing filed with the clerk, and whereas Councillor Bill Caxero has filed his resignation with the clerk on July 30th, 2017 to become effective immediately, and whereas Section 262 states that the council shall at its next meeting declare the seat to be vacant, and Section 263 speaks to council fill-in vacancies by within 60 days after declaring a seat to be vacant, appointing an eligible person who has consented who has consented to accepting the office or by requiring a by-election to fill said vacancy in accordance with the Municipal Elections Act. And whereas there are still approximately 15 months left in the current term of council, the Council of the Corporation of Town of Essex hereby resolves that as the resignation of Councillor Caxero has been received and accepted by the clerk on July 3rd, 2017, this council does hereby declare a vacant seat at the council table effective July 4th, and further that council shall pass a bylaw at its July 17th regular council meeting to either appoint an eligible person to fill the vacancy or declare that a by-election be held as per the Municipal Act and the Municipal Elections Act.
I have a mover in Deputy Mayor Malash, seconded by Councillor Snively. Any questions? Councillor Snively.
Through your worship, Rob, you said how long would this take? The process would
Through your worship, so in this draft motion, I've stated that potentially council could come back at the July 17th meeting with a person to appoint, a person who has accepted the position, eligible, or council at that July 17th, and it does not have to, and through your worship, it does not have to be the July 17th. Under the legislation, section 263, you guys have up to 60 days. So it does not have to be the July 17th meeting. I just, in my suggested resolution or motion, selected the next regular council meeting. So whenever that is, let's assume the July 17th, either a by-election would be declared or council would pass a bylaw appointing that person. So if it was by appointment, the vacancy in a best case scenario could be filled as early as July 17th. If council decides to declare a by-election, then you would be looking at approximately 60 days from that declaration of the by-election for a nomination day, and then the actual by-election itself would be 45 days from nomination day. So assuming you come back July 17th and council decides to elect a by-election, then you would probably be looking at about mid-October for appointing and filling the vacancy if you choose to fill by by-election.
Okay, further that, it's unfortunate. I hate to see Bill leave. He's contributed so much. But we're in a situation tonight, right here. We have 4 councilors here. And luckily, we have Councillor Bjorkman that's back. Because if Councillor Bjorkman wasn't back, we'd have a problem here tonight. And for some unknown reason, we have another councillor that just tends not to show up at meetings. So, you know, we get sooner the later, sooner the quicker, I mean, to get this filled. We have to get this, I would say, next meeting, 17th, we have to make a decision, I would say. What's that, Deputy Mayor? What do you think? No? Yeah, okay. But anyways, I say sooner the better we fill that position. Thank you.
So the motion is to declare a vacancy at this time, right? So are you ready for the question? All in favor of the motion? Motion carries. And like we said in the back room, there will be a report from administration to us with regards to, you know, who's next on the list and everything else. So if we appoint, we appoint. If we don't, well, we'll go the other route. Okay, I don't think I've asked if there's a declaration of conflict of interest yet, so I'll do that. No, thank you very much. Any additions to the published agenda? Mr. Clerk?
Your Worship, I have one change to the published agenda. Agenda item 6.2 has been deferred and rescheduled to July 17th. Ms. Daniel from the Windsor-Essex Compassion Care Community contacted me this afternoon and unfortunately was not able to make it today, so we're looking to have the organization here as a delegation on the 17th.
Thank you, sir. Any other additions? Yep, thank you. Looking for the adoption of the agenda this evening. Councillor Snively, Councillor Bjorkman, any questions? All in favor? Motion carries. any short jokes, so I won't tell you any. Councillor Snively.
Your worship, I forgot, under new business, I'd like to make a motion under new business if I could.
Okay.
Okay?
Yes, sir.
So when the time's right, I'll make that motion.
Okay. Yes, sir.
So, Your Worship, that's an amendment to the adoption of published agenda?
Yes, sir.
Okay, and the mover and seconder are okay with that amendment then?
You okay with that? No, you did. Okay?
Okay.
That's fine. It's been okay.
Item 5, adoption of minutes, that the minutes of the regular council meeting held June 19th be adopted as circulated.
Moved by Councillor Bonnie, supported by Deputy Mayor Malash. Questions? All in favor? Motion carries.
Item 6, under public presentations, we have Mr. Mike Cowan, partner at BDO LLP. He's here this evening to present the 2016 audited financial statements for the corporation of the town of Essex, which financial statements we're looking for council to adopt this evening as well.
Welcome, Mike. I see you've been here before, and you know where to go, and you got a shotgun shooter with you.
Thank you very much. Yes, I have Jeff here to assist with fielding any questions. It's nice to be back. Good to see you all. What I'm going to do is go through the statements at a fairly high level. I'm going to run through some highlights for you. I believe you've seen the statements, and we've gone through them with Jeff and Donna previously, and they have their support and approval at this point, but obviously tonight we're looking for council's support so we can finalize the 2016 year. I have the statements up on the screen, and I'm just going to scroll through a few pages. First off, again, just like to thank Donna and Jeff and their team for all the support when we come into the audit. It's very much appreciated. Can I go a page down? So in page 3 and 4 of your document, it's called 2 and 3 of the actual financial statements, but that's the auditor's report. You'll see that it's stamped draft at this point, but it's also dated today's date. The key sections in here talk about what is management's responsibility in terms of completing the financial statements. We do assist in preparation, but our job is stated in basically the third section, the auditor's responsibility, talking about how our job is to express an opinion on the statements, to whether or not we believe they're accurate, essentially. It talks about how we go about doing that, the different processes we follow. And it says in the very last sentence on that page that we believe we have attained enough evidence to provide the opinion we're giving. The opinion shows up on the top of the second page of that report. Essentially, we're saying that the statements do present fairly in all material respects the financial position of the town as at December 31, 2016, and the financial performance and cash flows for the year that ended in accordance with Canadian public sector accounting standards. So I'm going to move on to the balance sheet, or it says at the top, consolidated statement of financial position. So I'm going to spend the majority of my time talking about this in the next 3 pages, and again, just at a high level, and then I'll point out a couple things in the notes, and then free to tackle any questions you guys might have. So the balance sheet, and recall that PSAB accounting, it's been a number of years now where we show all assets. So a reminder, when we get to the surplus, I'll state my usual disclaimer. On the financial asset side of things, so those are the assets in terms of financial aspects. So we have cash as being the largest asset. It has come down a little bit over the prior year, but it's still fairly healthy at 29 million. The taxes receivable number has come down over the years in terms of collections have improved, which are good. Accounts receivable, you'll see that number's come down from 3.7 down to about 3.1. And the largest kind of year-to-year change is an Ontario grant was in the prior year number, and there was not a similar grant for this year. You'll see a couple more lines down. We see the investment in ELK. That number typically goes up in accordance with ELK's activity. And so that's the town's investment in ELK. Then we have the liabilities coming off that, so accounts payable and accrued liabilities at almost 3.3 million, and that's higher with increased holdback payables at the end of the year, just due to the nature of what was going on at the end of the year. You see an increase in other current liabilities, and you see a decrease in net long-term debt going from 19.5 down to 17.8. So there was only a very small amount of new debt during the year, and normal regular payments brought that balance down by about 1.8 million. So we've seen the debt come down by that amount. The net financial assets is your difference. You take the financial assets minus the liabilities. And then we have the non-financial assets. And obviously the biggest number there is the tangible capital assets. So that's the assets of the town, and it goes down to roads, vehicles, buildings. There's a breakdown that shows that. You do see an increase there. There was about 12 to 13 million dollars of activity in terms of acquiring and new assets, and also assets in progress at the end of the year. And then we depreciate those assets over their life. So we've seen that number go up about 5.5 million, but that's the net of the additions minus the depreciation on the assets that are on hand. I'm going to move on to the next page now. Consolidated statement of operations, accumulated surplus. It's your income statement for all intents and purposes. So we have three columns here. You see the budget column in the far left side. You see the actual for the current year and the actual for the prior year. So again, I'll just point out a few things. We see the grant income is down from the prior year at almost 6 million versus 7.5. And again, obviously those just vary year over year depending on the grants available, the ones you apply for and the ones that you actually receive. One other point of note here, the landfill compensation was up. Our understanding is that a lot of that had to do with the bridge project, providing a little bit more revenue on that in that area. Definitely over budget and definitely over the prior year. And then one other line I'll point out is the other line where we see about 679,000 more in line with budget, which is a decrease from the prior year. We did some drain billing catch up in the prior year, and that's the reason why that number is not quite as high this year. So overall revenues are a little bit lower than budget and also lower than the prior year, but again, the biggest change would be the grants from my perspective. On the expense side, we break things down by the different departments: general government, protection of persons and property, etc. And we see the differences there. For the most part, things are fairly in line. There are some increases and decreases, and I'm not going to get into the major detail of those, but we basically see those increases and decreases, but at the end of the day, management's working with the budget and working with the numbers through the year to get to this point. So we do see a surplus there of 4.8 million. And again, that's not a cash surplus. So this is where I usually give my disclaimer in terms of the surplus. On the balance sheet, we saw the largest asset is the tangible capital assets. So because we are showing the value of capital assets on the books, that makes up the largest part of that total. So it's not a surplus that we're used to working in the past, which was more cash flow based. And it doesn't necessarily mean that your cash flow went up, because we see that it did not. It was relatively consistent, if not down a bit. So that's my little disclaimer I usually comment on. The next few pages do break down things a little bit more in terms of how you get from the net financial assets to the change in financial assets. On the one page, it does show some data in terms of the acquisition of tangible capital assets of about 5.8 million in the current year, and also the change in tangible capital assets work in process. Those are kind of the two numbers I would point out on this page. And if we flip to the one after it, the consolidated statement of cash flows, it says, well, if you had a surplus of 4.8 million, how did your cash value change the way it did that we saw? So it just shows various increases and decreases on certain lines. Again, it shows the acquisition of tangible capital assets. It shows the long-term debt repay that I had commented on when we were looking at that, and a few other things to show the change in cash equivalents from one year to the next. So what I'm going to do now is jump ahead a number of pages. I believe it's page 16 in your on the slide deck. It's the long-term debt note. And we've always, well, for a number of years now, we've broken down the long-term debt by user fee supported. So you'll note that the third item in that category was paid off during the year. There's still the Essex and Harrow sewage plant loans, as well as a building energy upgrade debenture. And if you look at the next page, you'll see the property tax supported debt, which includes the Twin Pad Arena and a few other things, as well as the debt related to specifically to property-owned properties. And then on the next page after that, we show the breakdown of the debt repayments expected. So as debt gets paid down, we see the expenses are the total principal portion tends to go down. It was about 1.8 this year. It's almost 1.5 next year and for the next few years. And that's assuming no new debt's taken on, which I'm not sure if there's been any new debts to date or in the budget, but again, that's just essentially as at December 31st, 2016. And then the last note I'm going to point out is on, I believe it's on page 19 of the PDF, just a breakdown of the accumulated surplus. I commented about tangible capital assets and how it's a large part of that. There's a breakdown in here to show sort of the way the old pre-PSAB financial statements used to show sort of the general surplus on the second line, amounts for the capital fund, as well as equity and ELK, and then you see the portion of the surplus that would be dedicated to employee benefits payable, as well as the municipal debt, and finally the reserves. So you see a breakdown of the reserves below that. Again, just like to point out the level of reserves, and it is very important, especially with tangible capital assets depreciating and needing to be replaced over time. I think that's been more on council's agenda to consider in terms of budgeting going forward. There is a significant level of reserves, but keep in mind we're looking at a fairly large budget to deal with. So it's not necessarily it's not our job necessarily to tell you if your reserves are adequate. It's just our job to basically tell you if the statements are accurate. So you do see the reserves have gone up in total, which is generally a good sign to kind of plan for the future. But again, not going to comment on the adequacy of them or that in general. So that's all I really wanted to point out. I don't know if there's any questions from council on what I've discussed or anything you've seen in the statements you'd like me to further expand on.
Any questions on the council members? Councilor Bjorkman.
Thank you, through your worship. If I can, just to our financial officer, just a comment from you as far as the process and how you feel as a town we've done with our process here and our reserve levels that you commented on.
Mr. Morrison?
Through the chair. The process went well. We've been with BDO for a few years now, and we've had a few staff retire in the last couple of years. The new people that came in caught on quickly. It was a good experience. I think from both sides, I think we work well together. So we built our audit working papers prior with input from BDO, so we're prepared for year end, and I think we built a pretty good audit file. So that's my opinion.
Anything further? And if there isn't, we will ask for a motion to receive and support the program. The report, Councilor Bondi, Councilor Bjorkman, any questions? All in favor? Motion carries. Once again, thanks, Mike. Good job.
Thank you very much.
Item 8 on the agenda, Your Worship, 8.1, is CAO Report 2017-001, Spring Constituent Open Houses 2017. This report is for receipt, and that a second round of constituent open houses be considered by council in late fall or early winter of 2017.
You have comments? Okay. Moved by Councilor Bondi, supported by Councilor Bjorkman. Councilor Bondi.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just wanted to thank our staff for coming out that night and making 4 extra nights of work, 4 extra long nights in some of them. It was really, especially in Harrow, I can only speak for the Harrow open house. It was really well attended. There were a lot of comments from people that came out. Staff were very knowledgeable. We had answers to all the questions. We have a few follow-up issues that we're working on, and it was really nice. I regret not doing it sooner, and I hope we have another one in the spring or winter before the election silly season arises. So I just want to thank staff for their time.
Deputy Mayor Malash.
Thank you, through your worship. I just want to say, too, the Essex Matters document was very handy to have, and even not just for that evening. I've got a copy of it with me, and when people are asking, or if there's somebody new that moves into town, it's a handy document to give out to bring them up to speed as to what Essex is about and what we're doing. Thank you.
Mrs. Hunter. And Councilor Bjorkman.
Through you, Your Worship, I just wanted back to Councillor Bondi. As the recommendation says, we would plan for something late fall or early winter. I think in some aspects, we could maybe get better turnout if we had it in the not-so-nice weather, because people seem to want to get out and do things. So we're going to plan on late fall to early winter, and we'll also talk about different ways to try and get the word out more in terms of getting more people to attend.
Good. Councilor Bjorkman.
Thank you, Your Worship. Yeah, I was just to piggyback on the Deputy Mayor, that Essex Matters newsletter, I wasn't able to get out to a meeting this year, but it was very informative, and I think it's probably something that would be great for us to have semi-annual, even if we can't get it out to everybody, put it on our website, give it to our councilors, give it to our administration, just so that when we're talking to people, there's a lot of really good talking points in that document. I was looking at the costs of it, and to the question of how do we get more people involved, it was very cost effective. For $1,500 plus salaries, we put on 4 meetings. That's tremendous. So we could afford to do a little more advertising, a little more, getting the word out. So yeah, we do need to brainstorm a little bit how to get more people out, but I agree in that time of year, probably a better chance. And we'll have the information about the ward reviews and the elections coming up. So that'll be information people will be looking for. So we'll be able to hold something that I think people are interested in. It'll get more people out, more involved. But overall, I read all the questions and the answers and everything. People were really engaged. I thought it was great. Thank you.
And I was at all 4 of them, and I will say Councilor Bondi had the most. At the Harrow Center, you had the largest turnout, probably the most discussion. Thank you very much. All in favor of the motion? Motion carries.
Item 8.2 is Planning Report 2017-25, Community Improvement Plan Update. That said report be received and that council approves a transfer of $61,000 to the Essex Center Community Improvement Plan budget from the contingency reserve.
Thank you. Councilor Snively?
I'll move that.
Moves that, and seconder? Deputy Mayor Malash? Councilor Snively?
To Rita, the CIP program in Colchester, when will that actually go into effect, or have we had any inquiries on it?
Through you, Your Worship, to Councillor Snively, the Colchester CIP is currently in effect. We haven't received any questions about the CIP from Colchester businesses. However, we are working on marketing that program in Colchester.
And further to that, in the Essex Center and Harrow Center, have we had any recent inquiries, any recent inquiries?
Through your worship to Councillor Snively, we've had very many. It's been a very good year for the CIP in both Essex Center and Harrow.
Okay, and further to that, to Donna, do we have a updated balance, do you know, off the top of your head? Or it wouldn't be to you, to Jeff? No.
Mr. Marson?
Through the chair, you're looking for the balance for Harrow, Colchester?
Yeah, for both.
I
Both
believe-
centers, Harrow and Essex.
Okay, so Harrow, Colchester, it's, I think it's about, it's in the report, I think it's 96, it's about $97,000. And
Okay.
The amount for Essex was in a deficit position, and that's why
Right.
the additional funding from the contingency reserve.
Okay.
So that will offset the deficit, and it will also provide an additional $25,000 for
25.
any new interested parties.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Councillor Gartman?
Yes, I want to say thank you for the report. It was a great breakdown. When you looked at between Harrow and Essex, there's only $2,000 difference in the amount of money that was spent. There's $249,000 spent in Harrow since the inception, and $251,000 spent in Essex Center since the inception. So it's a great, balanced project. Still to be paid out, there's 45 in Harrow and 94 in Essex. So still just, it just shows that both centers are taking advantage. Nobody's, getting more than anybody else. Kind of got some issues where we're looking at, can we put all this money into one pot? Do we need to keep it separated? The data shows that it's being split, and people are taking advantage of it and getting the same benefit in both centers. So I just think it's great data for us to have. A very good report. Thank you.
And Councillor Bundy?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Mayor, my question is, where is this contingency fund? I'm aware that council still has a little bit of money, I think around $39,000 left in the 2017 contingency fund, but I don't know where this contingency fund is.
Mr. Marson?
So in 2015 and 16, we went through a process with Donna, myself, and Shelley, where we went through the contingency reserve and we identified any projects that had been fully funded in prior years, where there were small balances remaining in the contingency reserve. So those amounts then rolled into the wash. So it was labeled the wash. So any projects that were fully funded and they had a balance remaining in contingency that really had no home would roll into the wash, and that's where this money came from.
Aha! Is there more in this contingency fund? We're on to something.
Not anymore.
Anyone else? Just with the comments that Mr. Bjorkman made, I hope that gentleman that called me this afternoon complaining about how we don't do anything in town with our main street or our downtown area and in Harrow, I hope you're listening tonight and or watching. And if you aren't, Thursday night, I hope you're watching Thursday after this goes on. So 251,000 just this year, and you say we haven't done a thing in town, so thanks. Ready for that question? All in favor? Motion carries.
8.3 on the agenda is Planning Report 2017-27, Re-Heritage Designation for 1215 Eiler Road. That said planning report be received, that the property known as 1215 Eiler be designated by council by way of bylaw 1620, being a bylaw to designate the property as being of cultural heritage value, and that said bylaw received 2 readings this evening, and that finally that council authorizes the designation bylaw to be advertised, served on the Ontario Heritage Trust and the current property owner, and registered on title.
Moved by Deputy Mayor Malas, supported by Councillor Snively with the question. Councillor Snively.
Is this the Eiler Farm? Rita?
Through your worship to Councillor Snively, it was part of the Eiler settlement.
Okay, thank you.
Anything further? All in favor? Motion carries.
8.4 on the agenda, Your Worship, is a verbal report and PowerPoint presentation by Fire Chief Rick Garnell. He's providing an update concerning the recent announcement by the Ministry of Health and Long-Term Care concerning changes to emergency services, including dispatch and fire medic pilot projects.
Chief Ardell, how are you? You have the floor, sir.
Thank you, Your Worship. In consultation with the CAO, last meeting you received some correspondence from AMO regarding emergency service changes through dispatch and fire medic, and we thought it'd be beneficial if we kind of ran through what's happened in the last few years to kind of give you a background if you weren't sure on what was happening. So in 2015, the OPFFA, the Ontario Association, the Ontario Professional Firefighters Association, proposed a symptom relief pilot program for the province of Ontario. And one of the questions that we received was talking about 20 hours of training, and this is the 20-hour training program that was put forward. So this was a proposal to train firefighters to perform delegated medical acts by providing some symptom relief. This proposal is no longer being pursued. It's been taken off the table. And also at the same time, the Ministry of Health and Long-Term Care did a project called EMS TIF in regards to simultaneous notification. Because it's believed that the best way to be able to measure whether the fire service is doing any good to running to medical calls is to be all on the same page. Today, the way the medical calls are dispatched, they're through a provincial CAC center, then they're downloaded to the fire service. So there's a delay of 90 seconds or so. So they were saying if they went out and did a pilot program where they did a few major centers, Peterborough was one, Mississauga, Kitchener. There was 4 or 5 centers that were picked in this pilot project to go through this project and see if it worked. So the objective was to assess whether if both agencies going at the same time, if fire got there sooner, and the reality of that is there's, as we know, there's more fire stations in the province than there is EMS stations, so they do cover more ground. So was there any medical benefits? The study that they did said it was inconclusive and they couldn't provide enough data to be able to provide that information whether it was conclusive or not. And some of the issues there is fire service and EMS run under different worlds, so it just made it a little difficult to be able to determine whether they were based on the same numbers. So then in June of 2016, the union, the OPFFA, announced at their conference the province will review a firefighter primary care paramedic proposal. So that's the proposal that you've seen in that was put out by AMO last week, the notice. This proposal is a lot different than the other proposal. What this proposal is qualified paramedics that are currently working in fire stations across the province in the career settings at this point, and they would have they would make that firefighter paramedic, and then he or she would be able to perform the duties of a paramedic while on duty as a firefighter. Today, they're not allowed to do that. There's some legislation that's in the way that stops that from happening. So it wasn't the government that downloaded this, it was the union come up with the proposal. So that's how this proposal got out there. So they're looking at enhancing, so in June of this year, so the provincial government announced in consultation with the union that they were going to go forward with this project. So this project is, the province is investing money into this project. What they're going to do is provide 2 pilot centers in the province. So right now, there's several municipalities in the province that are looking to get on the pilot and go with this pilot program. So they got to provide information to the province whether they can do that if they have enough paramedics on staff to be able to staff the fire trucks, to do all those things. So they're going through, and at this point, there is not going to be any costing to those two municipalities once the pilot program is put in place. The provincial government is going to foot the cost of the pilot program. So right now, they're looking at, where they're going to do it. We got several months before anything happens, because there's lots of issues that have to be taken care of. There's 4 pieces of legislation that they have to touch on: the Ambulance Act, the Regulated Health Professions Act, the Fire Protection Prevention Act, as well as the Personal Health Information Protection Act. So there's got to be a lot of changes to numerous acts to be able to pull this off. And then just a little update: the Essex County firefighters, as the whole county does, we're in a base hospital training program. So we're provided medical training on inserting airways and providing defib. And Councillor Bondi, yes, I still would want you to save me, as in your email you stated you wouldn't, but I'd still want anybody to try. So, but we do get some extra training over and above standard first aid training. Paramedic training, just to give you an idea what it is a 2-year post-secondary diploma course through the Ministry of Health, and as well they got to pass an exam, and there's 25 approved training institutions in the province. So, right now where it is, and some of the questions asked was, what's the cost? And this program at this point, we don't know what the costs are, because we don't know totally what it entails in the province. Where we are, and what I can tell you about our costs today is all 3 stations in 2016, it cost us $46,000 to respond to medical calls throughout the town of Essex. Now, as part of when I was back in Chatham-Kent, we had the ability to make some changes in our dispatching protocol, where we, in Chatham-Kent, the police answer the 911 call, dispatch fire and police. Then they would download the EMS call to EMS once they got it, and council had decided to take that call prior to downloading it to EMS, because when the call comes in, what EMS does, they have a list of questions that they'll ask the dispatcher EMS to try and find out what the situation actually is before they send anybody out. What they were doing was, if someone said chest pains, shortness of breath, they were sending fire before they dispatched EMS, and in 6 months, our call volume tripled. So we went backwards and said we go back to the original tiered response agreement. So that's where it stands there today. And the only other, the other costs at this point, I was on a conference call with AMO today as well, and we're talking, we don't know where this is going to fall. We're waiting. We're probably 6 or 8 months before we see anything happen, because all the legislation changes that have to happen. Simultaneous notification. The Ontario Association of Fire Chiefs are going to send a letter on to both ministries, the Ministry of Health, the Long-Term Care, as well as Community Safety and Correctional Services, asking them to reinstitute that study on simultaneous notification. If this does happen, we truly believe that everyone has to be on the same page and answering the same call at the same time to benefit the patients in the province. And so, for best patient outcome, it's not proven yet, but hopefully this study will prove one way or another whether it is a viable option for the province to go to. Now, this is a system that's used predominantly in the U.S. The U.S. uses it a lot, and in Canada, Winnipeg is the leading model for the country in using EMS fire in the province. So that's my presentation.
Okay, I have Mrs. Hunter, our acting CEO.
Through you, Your Worship. I also just wanted to add, because Chief Arnell and I talked about this in terms of the proposed changes to our Employment Standards Act and other employment-related legislation with the requirement for equal pay for equal work regardless of class of employee. This is going to have an impact on this as well in terms of cost, because you may have a firefighter doing the same duties as many of the same duties as a paramedic and being paid a different amount of money. So this could have an impact on costs as well.
Thank you. Any, Councillor Bondi?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I thank you, Chief Arnell, for the presentation. It was helpful, and it helped get me, I have a little bit of a rubrics now to move forward. I still feel it's a form of downloading through the province. No matter how you look at it, if we're increasing what our fire departments are expected to do and not increasing the ambulance response. So it's interesting, like, how are we going to know patient outcomes? And I'm talking specifically in Essex County, because that's where I am, and that's my reality. So patient outcomes in Essex County are what I'm concerned of. According to your report, the fire medics would all be trained paramedics. That's correct?
Through your worship, yes. In this program, these fire medics are actual paramedics today. There's a lot of paramedics that work in cities across the province.
Okay, thank you. So in Essex, though, I know from reports in presentations from the fire chief in the fire department that a lot of our fire calls are medical calls. So is that the best service for the residents? Are we in the region experiencing low volumes of ambulances for whatever reasons? You know, not enough ambulances on the road, backlogs at hospitals. To me, that's the real question. I think it's great if firefighters are trained as paramedics. That's great. That's awesome, because that alleviates a huge concern, because that is a concern, right? If a firefighter is set out to a medical scene and doesn't have the medical training, that's a concern. But if they do, that's less of a concern. But is the concern in Essex County still the lack of ambulances on the road for whatever reasons? That's really what I think council needs to, as a region, not even Essex Council, but as the county, we need to focus on that. Do we not have enough ambulances on the road because of our aging population, because of our demographics? So that's my question, and I don't even know how we can answer that, but that's my concern, so I want it known.
Thank you. Anything further? Just why we have you there, Chief, in our communications from all over the province, we got a letter advising us that Richard Arnell was elected as Executive Vice President of the Ontario Association of Fire Chiefs. So congratulations to you, Rick, while you're sitting there. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Your Worship.
Yep. All in favor of the motion? Motion carries.
Item 8.5, Community Services Report 2017-021. Get Your Red and White On event, request to waive Town of Essex noise bylaw and road closure. That said report be received, that council approves waiving the town's noise bylaw from 11 a.m. to 10 p.m. on July 29th. That council approves closing Jackson Street between 11 a.m. and 10 p.m. as needed to accommodate the foot traffic for this event, and EMS being notified accordingly.
Moved by Councillor Bondi, supported by Councillor Snively. All in favor? Motion carries. Now, if I just may go back, we didn't get the chief's presentation moved and supported, and that was my fault for moving on. Deputy Mayor Malach moves, supported by Councillor Bjorkman. Any questions? Motion. All in favor? Motion carries. Thank you.
Item 10 on the agenda, any updates from County Council?
No, sir.
Moving on, Your Worship, to 11.1, correspondence to be received, that the correspondence listed in agenda item 11.1 be received and where indicated to further share such information with the community using suitable methods of communication.
Okay. Move receipt by Councillor Bondi, supported by Councillor Bjorkman. Would you like to have any questions on any of these? No? Okay, all in favor? Motion carries.
11.2.1 is correspondence resolution from New Tecumseth concerning the Ontario new carbon tax. That said correspondence be received or received and supported, and if council so chooses to support, that a letter of support be sent to the parties notified.
Moved by Councillor Bjorkman, supported by Deputy Mayor Malash. Any questions? All in favor? Motion carries.
Item 12 is committee meeting minutes, that the meeting minutes in item 12 be received and the recommendations contained therein be approved.
Moved by Councillor Snively, supported by Councillor Bondi. Question? Councillor Snively.
Through your worship, I'm getting back to the Fun Fest committee. I think Pam is looking for any volunteers. I think she's going to need some help over there, so any of the councillors want to help out there, I think Pam will accommodate that. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, sir. I think some of us have volunteered already, so way to go. Anything further? All in favor of the motion? Motion carries.
Item 14, Your Worship, is new business. As added to the adopted agenda this evening is a new business item brought forward by Councillor Snively.
Councillor Snively, you have the floor.
Thank you, your worship. I want to talk about committees. One in particular I sit on is committee adjustment. I think the last meeting, usually I don't call in and to confirm I'm coming to Rita, but the last meeting there was pretty sparse. We almost didn't have quorum. For some unknown reason, Councillor Vokes has not been to the last 3 meetings. He hasn't called in, he hasn't called in, he hasn't informed council or administrative staff that he's not going to attend these meetings. I don't know what the problem is there. We don't know. But to run town business in these committees, we have an obligation to the taxpayers. So I'd like to make a motion that we replace Councillor Vokes and add another council member to that committee.
Motion made by Councillor Snively, supported by Councillor Bondi. Discussion. Is there any discussion? Deputy Mayor Malash.
Thank you, through your worship. So I'm not sure of the protocol on the committee. Is there a particular person that has to be notified for meetings? Or who would, like if I wasn't going to come to the meeting, who would I normally call for that committee?
I can answer, Your Worship.
We have our clerk, Mr. Roger.
Through your worship, normally for all the committees have a procedures and best practices guidebook, and that's through the procedural bylaw. The procedural bylaw says that all committee members shall adhere to the best practices and procedures guidebook for committees and local boards. So in that document, there is language to the effect that states that if any member can't be present at the meeting, he or she is supposed to give notice to the chair or to the recording secretary of that committee. There is provision in the procedures best practices guidebook that states that if a member misses 3 consecutive meetings without providing notice, then that person can be removed from the committee. But normally, you're correct, it would be by notice to whoever's chairing that committee.
Deputy Mayor.
So maybe I'll ask Ms. Jabor, so you haven't received any notice from Councillor Vokes on his not attending these meetings?
Through your worship, usually an invitation is sent out by our planning assistant, and she will inform me of any cancellations. Our planning assistant is no longer with us, unfortunately. However, she did inform me that he never contacted her the last couple times. There was a correspondence between him and her in May, and there might have been some confusion as to whether the meeting was still on or not, but that meeting was never canceled, never sent a formal cancellation to committee members.
Thank you. So I would, yeah, I can understand how you'd, total disregard for, again, for procedures and what has to be followed. So, okay, thank you.
Anything further? Oh, Councillor Bondi and then Councillor Snively.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I support this motion because if you are going to be away from a meeting, you don't have to say why you're going to be away. You just have to send regrets saying you will not be there. If other council members or other committee members did the same and didn't send regrets, we could be at a loss financially for the notices and staff time to set these meetings up. So you can't walk around being on council acting like you can't commit to meetings or you can't let people know. Like, it's important. This is our job. And you don't have to be at every meeting. Like, we have to get away from that pressure of having to be at every meeting. But if you're not going to be there, at least have the respect and the decency to let people know, because people are counting on you to be there. If I didn't come tonight and say Councillor Bjorkman didn't come tonight and we didn't let anybody know, council could have all met here like they're going to have a meeting, but then they didn't have quorum. It's just the respect of the job. That's all. It's a simple email or phone call. I won't be there. And if you can't do that for 3 meetings in a row, that tells me you're not interested in being on that committee. So I support the councillor's motion.
Councillor Snively.
It's unfortunate, but I would expect council to do the same thing to me. If I don't call in 3 meetings in a row, it does cost money. It costs taxpayers money to put these meetings on. And if we don't have quorum, you know, we have the residents there in front. If we don't have quorum, we're sending people home. You know, it's very unfortunate situation, but thank you.
Nothing further? All in favor of the motion? Motion carries.
Mr.
Now-
Mayor,
Yes,
I would
Councillor Bondi.
like to, I know committee loads are heavy for other council members. My committee load is not as heavy, and I do no longer work at the libraries on Tuesday night. I would volunteer for the Committee of Adjustment if council so sees fit.
And I do believe that the meetings are on Tuesdays in the afternoon about 4 o'clock, I think, right? Rita? That's right.
For your worship, that's correct. Tuesdays at 4 p.m.
Okay, so if there's no one else challenging for that position, we have a volunteer. Do we need a motion, sir, to appoint this person? I imagine we do, because we do at the start of the term also. So, okay, Councillor Snively moves, supported by Deputy Mayor Malash, that Councillor Bondi be appointed to Committee of Adjustment. Any discussion to the motion? All in favor? Motion carries. Thank you for volunteering.
Item 15.1 is Councillor Bondi's notice of motion from the June 19th regular council meeting. That discussion be held and that administration be directed to provide a report concerning quarter revision attendance by council members over the past 5 years.
Councillor Bondi?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I believe it's pretty straightforward. I'm just looking to see if there's a desire with council to have a report on the Court of Revision attendance for the past 5 years. And I think it's pretty self-explanatory. Similar lines, the same council members keep being voluntold they have to go on the Court of Revision. And I just want to have an objective view of the past 5 years attendance so we can see what the patterns are.
Okay, we need a seconder for that. Deputy Mayor Malash, okay? Any further conversation? Okay, all in favor? Motion carries.
Item 16, any reports from council members this evening?
Okay, we'll start with you. I forget where we started last week, but we'll start with you, Councilor
Your
Snyder.
worship, I just like to thank the Chamber of Commerce in Harrow for spearheading this Canada 150 celebration they had. Councilor Bjorkman, Deputy Mayor was there, Councilor Bondi was there, I was there, I handed out a lot of hamburgers, I'll tell you, but it was a huge, huge success, very huge success. And I hope they do something next year, every year. I think we should look at this at both centers, really. Every year for July holiday, it was a great event, it really was. So I want to thank the Chamber of Harrow, and there was a lot of, all the service clubs got involved, every one of the service clubs. So hats off to them. They did one great, terrific job. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Councilor Bondi.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just a little notice from the Essex County Library. Our summer programs are up and running. You can check them out at the branch, or you can check them out on their website. We have family story times going on, watercolor paintings, preparing for the Harrow Fair, Legos at the library, Three Little Pigs construction. So for those families that are having stay vacations, all of the branches of the Essex County Library are running family programs. So pop into your local branch and check out what's going on.
Thank you. Deputy Mayor Malash.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Nothing to report in the sense that events to go to, but just want to thank Councilor Snively for cooking a mean hamburger. Those hamburgers were very good on Saturday. Thank you.
Councilor Bjorkman.
Thank you, Your Worship, and through you, I guess my statement is more of just a thank you to everybody. It's nice to be back. It's been a couple of months since I've been here. I got a lot of great wishes and prayers from a lot of people here on council, administration, the staff. Really thought about me and took care of a few things. We had people show up at the house, help us out with things that needed to be done. Residents that came into my wife's store, just well wishes and talking to her and supporting her. So just a big thank you to the team here and the town itself. That we've really felt the support. And I'd like to say that there are many issues that were dealt with while I wasn't here. And this council had some decisions to make, and this council had some tough decisions to make. And I want to say that I support this council 100%. So with regard to decisions that were made, my position, where I am, when this council makes a decision, regardless of the vote, we're all on this council together. So I support this council and everything that happened here in the last couple of months, 100%. And thank you very much for your support. Aside from that, I just want to say the Essex Fun Fest is this weekend. Pam's been working hard with volunteers. It's usually my job to help her out, and I bailed on her this year as well. So yes, we could use all the volunteers we can get our hands on. It's from Thursday to Sunday, as most everyone knows, and Saturday night is the fireworks again this year. So don't forget Saturday night, 10 o'clock. And we'll have a great weekend. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. And I'm just going to hit on that Fun Fest also. Councilor Bjorkman didn't mention that the parade this year is at 10 o'clock in the morning instead of 11, so that's 10 a.m. And we do need volunteers. It doesn't matter if you can only work for an hour today, maybe 2 hours tomorrow. That'd be great. Like every hour helps, believe me, down there. And further to the Fun Fest, the following weekend we have the celebration of Essex minor baseball, 60 years, 1957. So it's 60 years. July the 15th is a party that's going to be down there. All the minor ball kids and everything, even some of the old timers. There's 4 guys, 2 are still alive. that first talked about getting minor baseball started in Essex, because there were about 3 or 4 other communities that had it in the county, and Essex didn't. So these two guys, one's Jim McPherson, the other one's Bill Woltz, they're going to be on the float also. And everybody that from 57 till now, they're trying to get a hold of to come and be part of that parade. And I see Dave Cassman up there. Hopefully he's going to be down there too. I don't know how much minor baseball he played in the town, but he did play baseball in town. So it's going to be a great weekend. They have Dave Roseman coming in about 12 or 1 o'clock for pictures and autographs for the kids and everything. And Paws will be there from 10 a.m. till noon on the Saturday. So you want to see Paws and get your picture taken, you want to be there also. And we have Ralph Mallenby, a former member of Essex, Executive Director of Hockey Night in Canada, who I tell everybody hired Don Cherry, and he was also head of the Olympics for a number of years when he stepped down from Executive Director of Hockey Night in Canada. He's going to be our guest speaker that night at the meal at the arena. So it's going to be a great 2 weekends coming up. So come on out to Essex and enjoy yourself. Thank you very much. That's it.
Okay. Item 17, any further announcements?
I think we all worked them in right there. That's a good job. Thank you very much.
Okay. 18.1 on the agenda, bylaws for third and final reading. Bylaw 1619 being the confirming bylaw from the June 19th regular council meeting.
Moved by Deputy Mayor Malash, supported by Councillor Snively. Any questions? In favor? Motion carries.
18.2, bylaws for 3 readings this evening. Bylaw 1622 being a bylaw to authorize an agreement between Her Majesty the Queen, as represented by the Ministry of Community Safety and Correctional Services, the Town of Essex, and the Essex Police Services Board.
Moved by Councillor Bonnie, supported by Councillor Bjorkman. Any questions? All in favor? Motion carries.
Okay. 18.3, bylaws for first and second reading. 1621 being a bylaw to confirm the proceedings of the July 4th, 2017 regular council meeting.
Moved by Councillor Snively, Deputy Mayor Malash supports. Any question? All in favor? Motion carries. Now adjournment. Councillor Bonnie, thank you very much. Have a great evening, everyone. Enjoy the Fun Fest.